Adults as Learners, Module 2. Understanding the characteristics of adult learners, what makes learning happen, and how active learning is developed helps in creating the best learning environment possible. It is important that we see ourselves as learners in order to understand those we work with. Adult learners have varying interests, needs, and life experiences. In this module, we will explore your own adult learning experiences, look at the characteristics of adult learners and the key adult learning principles. We'll look at approaches to facilitate adult learning and factors that support learner persistence. We'll finally look at the qualities of a good tutor. Learning is a two-way street, and we can learn from those we teach. This unit will help tutors to understand adult characteristics, determine what helps learning to happen, and become active learners as they experience being a learner. We'll also look at some of the barriers adults face to learning. I want you to think of a specific recent learning experience you have had. It could be anything. Maybe it's something formal like taking a class, even an exercise class, or maybe you were being taught a new recipe. If you're still having trouble coming up with something, what about something you tried to learn on your own? Does that make it easier to think of something? Okay, good. Now I'm going to hope you all have something in mind and we can move on and think about, was it a good experience or a bad one? And what made it good or bad? There are a number of factors that can influence that. Maybe the teacher or the subject matter or the materials used. Perhaps it was the environment or the other students or other things that were going on in your life. Think about each of these things in relation to your recent experience. Think about how each of these could create either a positive or negative experience. We'll just look at the first one. How can the teacher negatively impact the experience? Well, probably in a lot of ways. If they're unknowledgeable, if they're impatient with you, if the pace of the lesson feels rushed, or if you feel like they are rushing you, or maybe if the teacher wasn't prepared for the lesson. So let's look at the flip side. How can they make it positive? Well, if they are prepared, and maybe they're kind of innovative in their approach of how they're going to teach something to you. If they're encouraging and patient, those would make the experiences more positive. You can do this positive, negative with each of these factors, thinking specifically of your own learning experience. You should also get some good ideas as you move through these modules of how you can make your approach positive for your learner. So let's look at the characteristics of adult learners. What do we know about them? Well, they want to be respected for their knowledge and experience. They have their own goals and values. They choose to attend primarily voluntarily. They have a wealth of experience. They want to learn what is relevant in their lives. They have other commitments that are going to demand their time. And all adult learners hope that they'll be successful. What else do we know about adult learners? Well, we know they have changing needs. The needs of the adult learner is going to change over time. The goals they identified at the beginning may become more realistic or evolve. For example, wanting to read to their children may become secondary to needing to read messages from the school and write messages to the teacher. Confidence. Adults often come into a learning situation with fear and apprehension, following a long history of failure. It takes a great deal of courage to admit their needs and to ask for assistance. Once in the program, some may exhibit negative attitudes because of those past failures. We can help to build their confidence. Competence. Each adult learner has unique talents and has succeeded in some areas of life. church, neighborhood, family, job, hobbies, sports, or as part of a network of friends. They are mature individuals who deserve to be treated as such. Energy. Energy levels are going to vary over time. Sometimes adults are tired when they come to a lesson because of the other responsibilities that they have. Maybe they work full time, or are looking after a family, or attending other classes. Goal orientation. Adult learners usually have very definite goals when starting an educational program. Maybe it's for self-improvement or getting a driver's license. Maybe it's to improve job skills or get their GED. Learning styles. Different people have different learning styles. Some will learn best if they can see or feel what is to be learned, while others have to hear it to know it. Most adult learners will already have a good idea of how they learn best, but you can help them to think about it and identify it, and then use it in your own lesson planning. Life experience. Adults have a wealth of personal, family, work, and life experiences that will provide unlimited possibilities for the creation and understanding of lessons. Motivation. Adult learners are usually highly motivated when they begin. Their motivation, though, can quickly diminish if they become discouraged, if progress is slow, or if other responsibilities affect the amount of time and energy that they can give to their learning. Motives. Adults often attend classes with a mixed set of motives: educational, social, and recreational. Sometimes they attend from a sense of duty, or because they're required to by their employer or to receive certain benefits. Reaction time. Increased age or poor health or even fatigue can affect the reaction time, vision, and hearing of our adult learners. Even the time of day can be a factor in how effective learning is. However, learners do not lose their capacity to learn simply because they are no longer children. Responsibilities. As we've noted, adult learners have many responsibilities. They are busy earning a living, taking care of a home or family, often just trying to survive like all the rest of us. As a result, many learners will have little time to review and absorb large amounts of material at one time. They don't have time to spend on things they don't perceive as contributing directly to their learning or to their lives. Results. Adult learners need to see immediate change and growth. They may be intolerant of anything that does not help them achieve their goals. Often as adults, learners' goals may be overly ambitious, and it will be up to us to help to break those big goals into smaller steps that can be more readily achieved and celebrated. Self-consciousness. Many adults develop learning strategies to conceal their lack of education and skills. These strategies may show up as excuses for non-performance. Being aware of this helps to identify it as a cause for lack of performance and helps to find strategies to overcome it. Self-motivation. Many adult learners are strongly motivated to study because they see it as a way to improve their self-image and reach other personal goals. Uneven learning. Adult learners will not necessarily learn at an even pace. It may simply be because some things are more challenging for the learner than others, or there may be external factors affecting their ability to concentrate. So let's look at the 5 adult learning principles. Number 1, adults learn best what is relevant to their lives. Adults like to see a connection between what they are learning and what they need and want to do in the real world. They want to make progress towards specific and often immediate goals. Relevant learning that advances goals and improves lives is more meaningful when adults discover something about themselves or a situation that they hadn't recognized before. In other words, learning sticks when the adults learn something that is both relevant and new. They're also more willing to incur demands on their time, for instance, do more homework, and to take more risks when they consider the learning relevant. As you become more familiar with the published instructional materials that we offer, you will notice that lesson topics center often on common life experience and needs. Number 2, adults need to apply what they have learned. Have you ever tried to learn a sport? Let's say basketball. You may do drills to learn how to dribble, pass, and shoot, but until you've actually played in a game, even one for fun, you won't feel like you've learned to play the game. This is true for learning to read as well. In our instruction to learners, we may use flashcards and memorization and modeling and worksheets and other activities. These are all valuable and have their place in building literacy skills. But in the end, learners will not be confident until they have used their new skills to accomplish real tasks. Number 3, adults need and expect to be treated with respect. Adults learn best when they feel valued, when their opinions are appreciated, and when they feel listened to. Adults want and deserve to have some say in the classroom and in the direction of their learning. Another part of respect is making sure the adults feel safe in the learning situation. They need to know that it's okay to make mistakes. Number 4, adults bring a wealth of skills and experiences to learning. Each adult learner brings a lifetime of experience, problem solving, negotiation, and accomplishment to the learning situation. Learning is much easier when you make use of these skills and connect the learner's experience to what is being taught. And finally, principle number 5, adults overcome many barriers to learning. These barriers may take on many forms, and the job of a tutor is to accept, guide, and support. Unlike children, whose primary responsibility is to go to school, adults have many responsibilities and they often interfere with learning. A changing work schedule and overtime can make it hard for students to get to class consistently. Family responsibilities like taking care of children or parents can interfere with the amount of time that the learner has to study outside the classroom. Some adult learners may be dealing with learning differences or disabilities that made traditional instructional approaches ineffective and frustrating for them in the past. If you start working with a learner and suspect there is an undiagnosed disability, please talk to your tutor coordinator. It doesn't prevent us from helping the learner to reach their goals, but there are different approaches that may be better suited. Finally, some of the barriers may be emotional, such as low self-esteem, fear of failing, or concern of what others think of them. These barriers can impact how willing a learner is to take risks with their learning. Remember, as a tutor, it's your job to accept, guide, and support. An effective instructor creates a safe environment where learners can take risks and help them to identify and cherish their existing assets and accomplishments. Successful tutors also recognize the support they are capable of giving. Your role is very specific in the life of your learner. When areas outside of your expertise crop up, you may help learners seek other resources and support, but you can't do it for them. Over the course of this presentation, we will look at each of these principles a little more closely. The difference between school and life. In school, you're taught a lesson, then given a test. In life, you're given a test that teaches you a lesson. Thank you, Tom Bodett. We'll take a couple of moments now to look at the difference between teaching children versus adults. Pedagogy. This is the art and science of teaching children. The teacher has full responsibility for making decisions about what will be learned, how, when, and if the material has been learned. It's teacher-directed instruction that puts the student in a submissive role to obey the teacher's instructions. And it's based on the assumption that learners need to know only what the teacher teaches them. It results in teaching and learning situation that actively promotes dependency on the instructor. Andragogy. This is the art and science of helping adults learn. You'll notice there's a big difference. The learner is involved in decision-making, informing what's relevant and of interest, using past methods of success and recognition of applied learning. The tutor actively engages with the learner in a proactive role to develop lessons, goals, concepts, and approaches. And it's based on the assumption that adult learners want to take responsibility and ownership for their own learning. Active learning is any approach to instruction in which All learners are asked to engage in the learning process. Active learning stands in contrast to traditional modes of instruction in which the learner is a passive recipient of knowledge from an expert. It is also part of the difference between teaching to children versus how we help adults learn. Active learning focuses on how learners learn, not just on what they learn. So we're going to ask the learner what they need and want to learn. Ask them, is it a new idea? Does it fit in with what you already know? Ask, can you tell me what this means? Can you use your own words to explain it? You can discuss goals and progress with the learner and explain the necessity for review and ask the learner to construct a review schedule. Active learning notes. These look at the lesson from the learner's perspective. So at the end of a lesson, you can ask, how does this fit in with what I, the learner, already know? What activities help me learn? How does it fit into my life? What are the things I didn't understand today? What about today's lesson did I enjoy and want to learn more about? We're working towards self-direction, and the following represents some practical ways that we can ensure that your learner is at the center of the learning process and experience. Set up a learning program that gradually decreases structure and direct supervision and increases responsibility. Ensure an appropriate pace that is challenging but not overloading for the learner. Encourage questions and exploration of concepts. Lead the learner toward inquiry before supplying them with too many facts. Provide regular constructive and specific feedback, both positive and negative. Encourage independent use of resources such as the library or journals, the internet, and other resources. And set projects or tasks for the learner which they must work on independently and complete by specified times. You can build on the learner's life experiences. Assist the learner to recognize their existing knowledge and skills. Help the learner to draw on their life experience and existing knowledge when problem solving, reflecting and applying reasoning processes. Build learning activities around topics that are consistent with the learner's interests and goals. Facilitate active learning opportunities. And focus on the learner's goals. Assist the learner to break their high-level goals down into smaller ones that are attainable in shorter periods of time. Provide meaningful learning experiences that are clearly linked to personal and professional goals. Ask questions that motivate reflection, inquiry, and further research relating to their goal. Review goals on a regular basis and acknowledge goal completion. Make learning relevant. Use learning materials that reflect the learner's interests and goals. Develop learning activities that build on a learner's existing knowledge, skills, and interests. Ask the learner to do some reflection perhaps on their learning, on what they expect to learn, what they have learned, how they might apply what they've learned, and how it will help them to meet their goals. Encourage practical learning. Develop approaches to breaking down barriers to participation. Be explicit about how learning is useful and applicable to their goals. Encourage activities that use the learner's life experience as a base. Promote active participation by allowing learners to try new things rather than simply observe. Provide plenty of practice opportunity and repetition in order to promote development of skill, confidence, and competence. Make participatory activities purposeful rather than simply games for entertainment. Be respectful. Take an interest, acknowledge the wealth of experience that the student brings to their learning, regard them as a colleague who is equal in life experience, create the condition for discovery and new understanding as an equal learning partner, encourage expression of ideas, reasoning, and feedback at every opportunity. Acknowledge others' values, beliefs, and opinions, even when you disagree with them. Help learning happen. To do so, we're going to provide meaningful content, guide the learning process, share our own experiences of life and learning, share the way we use literacy in our daily life. That's a newspaper, greeting cards, recipes. We're going to get to know our learner. Ask what our learner found helpful in the tutoring session, and ask what parts of the session were enjoyable. So let's take a look at some of the barriers that our learners face. Adult learners face many barriers that make it difficult to access, pursue, and be successful in learning opportunities. These can include such varied issues as poverty, fear, stress, fatigue, boredom, attitudes, financial problems, health problems, physical limitations, lack of childcare facilities, lack of transportation, etc. When you think of the program that we offer, it's free, it's confidential. More than half of the people in New Brunswick are struggling with their literacy, yet our doors are not being beaten down with people wanting our services because there are still barriers to learning. So what are some of the barriers? Well, there can be situational barriers, life factors, those that arise from an individual situation or environment. These can include the multiple roles and responsibilities of adults in relation to work, family, and community, the resources available, time, energy, finances, the level of support from family members, the distance the adult learner must travel for the learning opportunity. It can be institutional, limitations that are built into the design, delivery, and administration of learning opportunities. Examples might be the availability and quality of information about the learning opportunity, the admission criteria, the complexity and quality of registration and administration procedures, the format, timing, scheduling, and sequencing of learning opportunities, the attitudes and behaviors of the program staff, or the quality and availability of essential support services. And the barriers can be dispositional, often referred to as attitudinal factors, those related to the beliefs and attitudes and self-perceptions of a learner. These can include self-confidence, belief about the value of learning, belief about himself or herself that might impede learning. Example, I'm too old to learn, or I'm too stupid. Prior negative experiences in learning, and health concerns that may adversely affect learning. When learners are in a safe, supportive environment, they often share information about their lives and the challenges that they face. However, not all learners feel comfortable in doing so, and it becomes harder to figure out what might be getting in the way of their learning. It's important for tutors to establish a safe and supportive learning environment and to listen, observe, and use open questions to encourage learners to share relevant information. Some of the signs that program staff can look for as possible indicators of some barriers are chronic tiredness, inappropriate behavior, home-based assignments are not completed regularly, frequent lateness or absences, signs of stress or anxiety, reluctance to participate, difficulty seeing or hearing, and being frequently distracted. Many of the adult learning best practices that were explored earlier in this presentation are relevant when it comes to helping learners overcome barriers. Encouraging learners to set their own learning objectives, involving them in their learning plans, offering choices of methods and resources, and involving learners in the evaluation of their learning are all positive steps to mitigate barriers to learning. View learners holistically. Remember that learners have complex lives, play multiple roles, and may have conflicting priorities. Respect and empower learners. Empower learners by encouraging them to address the barriers themselves. Connect them when possible with the appropriate support services and provide encouragement throughout the process. Be flexible and understanding. Recognize that rigid policies and practices can be part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Allow learners to work at their own pace, factor in domestic situations, and be understanding of the fact that some learners will need more support than others. There are a multitude of potential barriers to learning, and each learner will experience their own unique combination of these barriers. Whilst it's helpful to understand the barriers that a learner is facing, this is not always an easy task, and tutors should explore these challenges carefully and respectfully. Responsible tutors are aware of the barriers inherent in the program model that they are facilitating and provide as much support as possible to mitigate those barriers. Persistence. Research from the National Center for the Study of Adult Learning and Literacy has identified 4 factors that support student persistence. Awareness and management of the positive and negative forces, self-efficacy, goals, and progress. So let's start with the first. Awareness and management of the positive and negative forces in a learner's life. Earlier, we pointed out that adult learners have other responsibilities and challenges, and that these compete for time. Work, family, transportation, childcare. These forces can diminish the motivation and persistence. However, adult learners also have positive forces that can support their learning, encouraging friends and family, a desire for a better job, a wish to be a role model for their children. When tutors help learners to recognize the use of positive forces and to make plans to deal with the negative forces, those learners are more likely to stay in the literacy program. Self-efficacy. What do we mean by this? Well, self-efficacy is the ability to understand what is required to accomplish a task, then to organize resources and execute a course of action to accomplish it. It's not self-confidence. Self-confidence is a global attitude. Self-efficacy is context-specific. For a literacy student, self-efficacy might be shown by a student saying, "I can read my bank statement." Tutors who create opportunities for students to successfully use new skills help them to build self-efficacy. Goals. When a learner enrolls in an adult education program, there has usually been an experience in that person's life that has caused them to decide to enroll, and this event then provides the context for setting long-term and short-term goals. The educational and life goals that will be the focus of the instruction. For instance, that person may be laid off from their job or told that they can't get a promotion unless they do X, Y, and Z. And part of that is to improve their literacy skills. That is a long-term goal. And finally, progress. Goals that only support persistence when learners can see they are making progress towards those goals. Tutors must provide learners with opportunities to measure and evaluate their progress. It's one of the reasons we suggest breaking down big goals into smaller ones, and then taking the time to help the learner identify when they have met those goals. The research for the National Center for the Study of Adult Learning and Literacy also identified 4 factors that support student persistence. A sense of belonging and community. When learners feel welcomed and respected and develop a sense of belonging, they are more likely to keep coming to class. Cultivating a sense of belonging from the start is crucial. Clarity of purpose. This is connected to the goals and progress supports we just talked about. When learners are clear about their own purposes for learning, the tutor's expectations and the progress they are making, they can make informed decisions about their learning. Agency. This means that learners want to exert control over their learning. They want to make decisions for themselves. Competence. Adults want to feel competent in important areas of their lives. This is related to the self-efficacy we just mentioned. When learners see that they can successfully accomplish specific tasks, they feel competent in their learning. When they feel competent, they are more likely to want to learn new things and continue with their learning. Relevance. The degree to which new knowledge relates to the adult's goals, interests, and life experience strongly affects the adult's motivation to continue learning. Again, adults have competing responsibility. If learning is not relevant, it's going to take a back seat to other priorities. Stability. Learning is difficult in a chaotic environment. An adult is more likely to persist in learning when the learning environment is stable, structured, predictable, and safe. So what about the qualities of a good tutor? A survey of adult learners reveals that the qualities they need the most in their tutor was to do with the tutor's attitude, not their aptitude. The qualities most often desired in tutors have little to do with being an expert and everything to do with being an authentic, caring human being. An adult who returns to learning has made a commitment that takes a great deal of courage. People are not comfortable when they feel they don't know something. On the tutor's part, it takes patience and sensitivity to sustain this courage. So it takes patience. Learning can be very slow. Do not set your expectations too high or you will increase the risk of frustration and disappointment. Understanding. Many learners have other problems in their lives that are compounded by their lack of skills. These problems will have an impact on their concentration and ability to learn. Concentration. You meet with a learner for a learning session. Try to keep your time focused on the lesson you have planned or the skill you want to develop rather than getting sidetracked by personal or social concerns. Adaptability and creativity. Because each learner is unique, you have to adapt your teaching to the individual's needs and abilities. Enthusiasm and encouragement. Praise your learner for small successes. He may have found learning discouraging in the past with little positive feedback. You may have to establish learning as an opportunity for personal satisfaction as well as skill development. Sense of humor. A sense of humor will reduce tension in what may otherwise be a stressful situation. A shared joke or a funny story will help to keep the relationship on light and equal footing. Awareness of special problems. There can be many reasons why an adult has not learned to read. Some have had limited opportunities, some learn more slowly than others. They may be sight, hearing, or perceptual problems. Many adults are experiencing problems at home or at work that have an impact on their ability to learn. Dedication and influence. Your achievements with your learner may seem small and short-term at times, but you may never know what far-reaching influence you may have on your learner and his family. Perseverance. Not all adult learners accomplish their goals. Sometimes progress is slow, and you will confront problems. Don't give up too easily. Working with you may be the learner's last hope. And commitment. By making a real commitment to teaching, you may greatly influence the life of those you are helping to learn. So in this module, you have explored your own adult learning experiences, discussed the characteristics of adult learners, reviewed the key adult learning principles and approaches to facilitate adult learning. Then we looked at the factors that support learner persistence and the qualities that make a good tutor. We appreciate the time you've taken to learn about working with adult learners. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to discuss this with your tutor coordinator or to contact us here at Laubach Literacy New Brunswick.